It's time for us to check back in with the Panther on Cold Mountain and Other Stories by Charles Fletcher. If you missed the previous reading, just look in the description below for a playlist. Today we're going to start with the gambler and the chicken. Since the time of Adam and Eve, it seems that the nature of man is to want something for nothing. There are many ways of trying to get something for nothing, but the one that is most popular is gambling. That is to say, I'll beat the odds, or I know I can win. It has always been this way and will continue to be in the future. Columbus was told that the world was flat, and if he sailed far enough to the east, that his ships would drop off the edge of the world. Old Columbus said, "I'll take a chance." Recently, while visiting my brother TJ in North Carolina, we were discussing how the price of mountain land had increased over the past 50 years. You know, he said, I could have bought the old Aunt Hass Clark home and the mountain for $6,000 a few years back. Do you know that those people from Florida are now paying thousands of dollars for a small spot to build a summer home? Why didn't you buy it from Aunt Hass? I said. As I remember, you were always a gambler. Even when we were in grade school, you tried to win everyone's marbles. That all changed several years ago. Let me tell you a story about my gambling. As you said, I always thought that I could beat anyone at his game of chance, and I always thought it was easier to do that than having to work for something. He then began his story. When I went into military service during World War II, I came in contact with real gamblers, professionals, the ones who could convince you that you could win against all odds. With some spare time between my duties, I thought, why not? I will win lots of money and send it home. When this war is over, I'll have plenty of money when I get back home. This was my first experience with big-time gambling, and I didn't win. The war soon ended, and I returned home to Canton, my little hometown in the mountains of western North Carolina. One of the first things to be done was to get a wife. I didn't have to look around too much because I had made my mind up as to who I wanted for a wife. I went to school with the girl I had in mind, and she also lived in the same community that I lived in. Her name was Alveda Medford. She would be the one if she would marry me. The time came for me to muster up enough courage to ask her. What if she says no? Never know what she'll say. I better just get it over with. She said yes, and we began planning. Time was short, and the big day soon came. We were man and wife. I forgot all about the gambling until I began working in the paper mill that was in Canton. It seems that gambling shows up in places you never think it would. Being newly married, I needed to earn and save all the money that I could. We wanted to build a new home on some land I had bought. Alveda and I saved as we could, but there was the buying of food and clothing. Alveda said, why don't we get a few chickens? We wouldn't have to buy eggs, and maybe we'd have enough to sell. Good idea, I said. I began to shop around for a few hens and a rooster. One of our neighbors had more chickens than he needed, so he offered to sell me a few. How much for the hens? I said. Well, seeing that you are just getting started as a newly wedded man, I'll let you have 12 hens for $6, and I'll throw in a rooster for free. It's a deal, I said. He caught the hens and put them in a wooden box. This was the easy part. He then went after the rooster, but that big red bird wasn't going to go nowhere. He ruffled his feathers and made a dive toward his master. When he was close, the boss made a quick grab and laid him by the legs into the box with the hens. He went. I gave him the $6 and headed home. We were now the proud owners of a chicken farm, and we were on our way to getting rich selling eggs. They would bring 15 to 20 cents a dozen. All went well for a while, except that rooster had it in for me. Every time I went to gather the eggs, he would try flogging me. I would give him a kick and he would back off. We soon experienced a shortage in eggs in the nest. We didn't know where they were going until one day Alvita saw a dog coming out of the hen house with an egg in its mouth. It seemed that he knew exactly when each hen had laid an egg. We threw rocks to run him away, but he would slip back when we were not watching. I was buying eggs at the store for 30 cents a dozen and chicken feed at $1 a bag. This was a losing deal. Got to think of something to get my $6 that I paid for those chickens back. There was a fellow at the paper mill where I worked who had a gambling thing going. He would have tip boards that he sold chances from for money and anything else he wanted to make a profit on. That's the answer, I said. I'll run them chickens off on a tip board. One evening after I finished my shift at the mill, I headed to Smoky Mountain Wholesale to purchase tip boards. I was about to get back in the gambling business. The boards were $1 each. There were 50 chances on each board. At 10 cents a chance, that would earn $5. This would get me $4.75 for each chicken. What a profit, I thought. The first chicken to be sold on the tip board was a big black hen. She was fat and would make a big pot of southern fried chicken or a big pot of chicken and dumplings. What a deal. I would tell all the prospective gamblers. All went well until I tried to catch that old black hen. She must have known something fishy was going on, and she didn't want any part of it. I sold 40 of the 50 tickets, and the ones that had bought wanted me to open the seal to see who the winner was before going home. Okay, I said, what if the winning number is still on the board? Then you win the hen. Off came the seal, and you guessed it, I was the winner of the old black hen. Alvita gave me a hard time about the gambling, so I agreed to take the chickens to the Farmers Federation. This was a farm supply store that bought and sold chickens. They would pay me 50 cents each for the chickens. After they went in the chicken house to roost on a Friday night, I caught them, tied their legs together, and put them in a big box. On Saturday morning, I was on my way to the store to sell the chickens that we were going to get rich off of from selling the eggs. Again, that old black hen gave me a rough time. She somehow got her legs untied, and when I opened the box, out she jumped, and out the door of the store she ran. I gave the others to the clerk and said that I would catch the one that got loose. I went outside and saw that black hen sitting under the store. Under I went, crawling on my knees, bumping my head, and never noticing that the store had piled their coal for the heater under the store. The farther I crawled, the farther the chicken went. I happened to notice that I was black with coal dust and spider webs. What am I doing? I said. I've ruined a good pair of pants that cost $1 and my best shirt that cost 50 cents. What for? I thought, all this for a 50-cent hen. I crawled out from under the store, went inside, got my $5.50 and headed home. As soon as Alvita saw me, the world began to come apart. Where have you been? What happened to you? These were only a few of her remarks before I had a chance to explain. I told her what had happened, and then she began again. It serves you right. You're trying to gamble them chickens away when you know good and well that gambling is a sin. I hope you have learned a lesson. Just look at you. Them good clothes will never wash clean again. Soon everything was quiet. I had learned my lesson. That old black hen had taught me that gambling and chickens don't go together. The next one is trading cows. I guess it is also the nature of man to barter and trade with someone with the intention of getting the better of the deal. This was true of my dad. He would trade anything he had, always thinking that he was getting the better part of the deal. There was one such deal that he did when I was about 10 years old that I will never forget. It was a deal that involved our only source of milk and butter. This was our big Jersey cow that gave our family nearly 10 quarts of rich milk twice every day. Once each morning and again that evening, my brother TJ did the milking, and there was so much milk that he couldn't carry it to the house. TJ was only 9 years old. Mom had to go to the barn and bring the milk to the house. We never had the faintest idea that this member of our family would be involved in one of Dad's swapping deals, but our cow was about to move to a new home. It happened at a time when Mom was visiting her mom and Dad. She was gone for only one day, but the setting was perfect for one of the biggest and worst trades that Dad ever made. A drinking buddy of Dad's came to visit the day that Mom was away visiting. His name was Jack Blankenship. He lived in the old Sam Robinson home place off Thickety Road. It was a short ways from the Oak Grove Baptist Church. We were living in an area known as Hainty Hollow. Lots of people stayed away from this area at night. They were superstitious and believed all the scary things that they had heard about ghosts that were in the nearby graveyard. We lived there for several years and never saw any ghosts, but we children would not go near the graveyard after dark. Well, Jack and Dad were standing at a big spring that was at the foot of a big maple tree. We had a spring box there where Mom kept her milk and butter in the cool water that was flowing from the spring. The refrigerator was not a common thing in the home at this time, the 1930s, where we lived. The spring box was also where Dad usually kept a half-gallon fruit jar of homemade moonshine, corn liquor. It was where he entertained his friends when they came to visit. I think this was the reason that he had a good bit of visitors. They enjoyed the cool spring water that they used to get the sting from their throat caused by the white lightning. Here was the perfect time and place for Jack to get him a good cow and get rid of the one he had that was going dry. Now our cow had come to the drain from the spring for a drink of water. Say, Fletch, how would you trade that cow of yours for a real good cow that will have a calf pretty soon? You could probably get $4 or $5 for the calf if it's a heifer. If it's a bull calf, you can feed it real good for about 6 months and kill it. You'd probably get 100 cans from it. He wasn't as far along with the drinking as Dad was, so he was taking advantage of this to make a trade. Well, my cow won't have a calf for quite some time, and I could use an extra $5. I'll trade with you. I'll get one of the boys to go home with you and bring your cow back. The deal was made, and I went with Jack and brought back the new cow. Mom came home a little before dark, and one of the first things she saw was the strange animal. "That's our cow," TJ said. "Dad and Jack Blankenship traded cows today. Don't know why, though. Our old cow gave plenty of milk, and it was pretty rich. Had about 2 inches of cream on a bucketful. Dad just likes to do some trading, I guess." She told Dad, "You take that cow back this very minute and bring my cow home." "I can't go tonight. I'll go talk to Jack tomorrow." "You'd better," Mom said. "TJ, you better go and milk her if we have to wait until tomorrow to take her back to Jack." TJ got a big 2.5-gallon bucket and headed to the barn. He wasn't gone long until he came back to the house with the milk. He didn't have to have Mom come carry the milk to the house because he had milked only about 1 gallon from this cow. It was nothing like the big bucket of milk from our cow that Dad had traded. Mom began to cry. "We won't have enough milk, and I can't give the Holland family any. Their little children will be without milk because they don't own a cow, and this milk is so skimpy that I won't have any cream to churn and make butter for the table. How could anyone be stupid enough to trade a good cow for one that is skin and bones and doesn't give enough milk for our family?" Dad hung his head down and went out the door. I followed him and said, "You better think of some way to get our cow back, or you'll never see any peace of mind around here." "I know," he said. The first thing tomorrow morning, you make a trip to Jack's house. When no one is around, you tell him that I have some mighty fine peach brandy, and if he would come over, I'll let him sample it. This will get him to come, and I'll think of some way to get our cow back." Sure enough, Jack was at our house around dinner time. His 12-year-old son, Willard, came too, so he could visit with TJ and me. Mom invited them to eat with us, but they said they were not hungry. Dad rushed through his meal and headed to the spring box and to the moonshine that he had added peach flavoring to. Jack was right behind him, and it was not long until they were sampling the peach brandy. After about an hour and a dozen samples of the brandy, Dad and Jack were doing a lot of talking. Dad had made it a point to not drink very much, but gave Jack all he wanted. "Say, Jack," Dad began, "how would you trade me my cow back? The old woman is having a fit over me letting you have her." "I don't know," Jack said with a slur in his speech. "My old woman likes that cow. Haven't had this much milk from any cow that I've owned before." Dad saw right away that Jack wasn't about to part with his new cow without some kind of a bargain. "Tell you what I'll do," Dad said. "I'll give you your cow back and throw in one of them pigs out in the hog lot." "I don't know," Jack said. "I guess I could use a hog for our winter meat. We don't have one. I don't want to part with this good cow, but seeing as to the trouble you're in with your old woman, I'll trade with you." "Go get a sack," Dad told TJ. "Need something to carry the pig over to Jack's house. Put a halter on the cow. You and Charles can go with Jack and Willard and bring our cow back." Off we went, Willard with the pig in the sack thrown over his shoulder, and TJ leading the cow, and Jack was staggering along behind. That peach brandy was working on old Jack. It was during the summer months, and it was pretty warm. We had traveled to Homebrew Knob about halfway when Jack said, "I need to stop and rest." Willard took the sack with the pig in it off his shoulder and laid it on the ground. "This pig has finally quit kicking, must have gone to sleep." Willard opened the sack to take a peek. "Dad, I believe the pig is dead," said Willard. "No, son, he's not dead. He's resting. Close that sack and let's get on home." When we reached Jack's house, Willard set the sack with the pig in it on the ground. "Dad, I believe this pig is really dead." "If he's dead, you're the one who killed him. Take him to the pig pen and let him go. He'll be okay." Willard emptied the sack, but the pig didn't move. He hollered to his dad, "This pig is dead. What do you want me to do with him?" "Willard, you killed my pig," he said to his son. "We can't waste that good meat. Bring him to the house. I'll dress him and we'll eat him for supper." TJ and I put the halter on our old cow and started to make our way back home. TJ said, "I bet Dad won't ever trade off our cow again." Anyhow, everyone was happy. Mom had her cow back, and Jack and his family had the best supper that they had had in a long time out of that dead pig. We'll stop right there today. Interesting stories from Charles, and as you can see, there's kind of a note of humor in all of them that he tells, which is funny, as he remembers back to when he was a boy. The first one about gambling, I guess I'm too frugal to be a gambler. Like if I think about giving some money just in case I might win something, I think, well, what if I just keep the money and then I'd have it? So I'm not really much of a gambler. Now, I've certainly bought chances on stuff where people were raising money to, like, maybe they were auctioning off a gun or something like that to raise money for a benefit, and then at that benefit they draw out the name. I've done stuff like that. But him talking about the mill, that mill where Charles's daddy worked, or TJ worked in this part. I think Charles's daddy worked there too, and then TJ worked there, and I think Charles worked there some too. I think, and that's common in the area of Canton, especially in those days. Lots of people, different people worked at the mill. The mill's now closed. But that's where Papa Tony, Matt's daddy, that's where he worked. And Matt worked there some too when me and him were first dating, but he did not work for Champion, for the mill. He worked like for a contractor that was working in the mill. anyway, because of that, being kind of around that, and when me and Matt met, I worked at Lake Logan, which was a facility that the mill, really the corporation of Champion, used for a meeting facility. So they would bring people in. We'd sometimes have to go to the airport and pick them up, and they would come in, kind of the big wigs, if you will, and they'd come and they'd have their meetings there at the lake, but they could also fish, and they'd go golfing and hike and, you know, enjoy the beautiful setting, whatever they wanted to do. Anyway, because of being all around that, I've heard a lot about those tip boards and a lot about the things that did go on back then in the mill, and kind of the bets and the things people would, you know, whether they were betting on the local football team or on something on TV, or, you know, like a national football team or something. So I can really, really understand that gambling that TJ was talking about. It's funny, talking about the chickens, he thought he's gonna get rich with the chickens. Him and his wife both kind of thought that, and then it turned out they were just more of a cost than actually, you know, being able to sell the eggs, and then all the stuff started happening to them. We get asked a lot about our chickens. Now, right now, we're down to 3 hens. We just have 3 hens. That's the least we've had since we ever had chickens. But we show our chickens some here and there, but as far as doing a video on chickens, we've never done that, because there's just so many people out there telling you exactly how you should do your chickens, and we don't necessarily do ours like that. We do take care of them. We feed them and water them every day. We make sure they're safe. And funny, TJ talking about the dog, when me and Matt, many years ago now, Pap, when we first decided we were going to get chickens, Pap told us, because of course he grew up in a family of chickens, he said, you're going to have a constant battle with stuff trying to get them and trying to eat them, and you'll lose most of them. And that's one thing that hadn't happened with ours. Matt built a really sturdy house. They go in at night and we shut them up and nothing can get in, and then the run is pretty sturdy. Now, it's not to say things haven't tried over the years. Things can dig under, you know. Matt's had to patch and make, put it back. Most of that digging like stuff would happen at night, and the chickens would be shut up anyway. They couldn't get them, but they try to get in the lot because they smell all the chicken, maybe the chicken food that's left, or the chickens themselves. Anyway, that part hadn't happened to us. But if you ever had chickens, then you know things do happen. Sometimes chickens just die. Sometimes chickens kill each other. Once you have chickens, all those sayings about chickens you can really see. So I can understand, like him talking about the rooster being mean, and even the black hen outwitting him. That's funny, and crawling under the store. We had a rooster. We don't have a rooster right now, but we had one. I guess it was the first rooster we ever had. And we named him Rex. He was beautiful, big old huge red, just like what TJ was talking about his chicken. And he was very, very mean though. Oh, he was mean. And finally, me and Corey and Katie, of course they were younger, much younger, at home, still in school, and we finally got to where we told Matt we wasn't going to go out there to feed him or do anything to help, because he was so mean. He'd flog you every time you went in the coop, And finally, Matt took him to a friend at work, kind of like what TJ did. TJ had to give in to his wife. Matt had to give in to me and Corey and Katie, and took Rex to work. Took a ride to work, got him off the roost, just like how he explained, and give him to Melvin, one of Matt's friends, and he took him to Junaluska. And there, his chickens were let loose. They wasn't caged up like ours. So I think Rex enjoyed that. He was also mean to Melvin too, though, and I think eventually, it was a bobcat or something that got Rex, so he's no more. But he was mean, so I identify with all that. And then go on to the trading. I've never been one to trade either. I bet you know someone. I do. I can think of several people. They just constantly trade. They're just trading this and trading that. Now, there's some people that trade, and they always do. Now, Charles's daddy sounds like he wasn't that good at trading, but there are traders who just always come out ahead. They just always come out ahead, and they can like stumble onto something and maybe spruce it up a little bit and then trade it for something better. Paul has a friend like that, and he just is constantly kind of wheeling and dealing and trading. He has a full-time job. This is not his job, but he just enjoys that, and he's really good at, I guess, convincing people, but also finding kind of diamonds in the rough and then fixing them and then making money off of them. I would never be that person. I couldn't. But it was interesting. I loved the way Charles, some of his phrasing. I liked where he talked about that Jack Blankenship lived on the old Sam Robinson place. I'm often fascinated by that. We do that same thing, and you probably do where you live too, how we identify places with people who was once there who have not ever been there. I mean, not been there in 10, 15, 20 years, but we still call it that. I bet that was the same with the Sam Robinson that Charles was talking about. Just the other day, you might have heard me in one of my videos, I said me and Granny saw that helicopter. This was before it come to Wilson Holler with the big saw that was cutting, that we saw it down at Johnny Hampton's. Bless Johnny Hampton's heart, but he's not been alive in 15, 20 years. But see, in my mind, that's still Johnny Hampton's place. The first house on our road, I still think of it as Pickles' house. It's not Pickles' house. Pickles' been gone a long time too, and the dear people that live in it are precious. I love them, and they've been there a good while now, but I'm still, in my mind, I think, oh, down at Pickles, when I should be thinking, oh, down at the Henrys. Anyway, it's funny how those place names stick like that. Even like up the creek from our house where we hike sometimes, there's places up there that have not been, nobody's lived in them. There's a Robinson place, so the Robinson Cove, the Robinson cabins. There's really not been any cabins there in my life, and I'm 50. How old am I? 55? I have to think about it. I started to say 54, 55. I just turned 55 in August, so 55 years. But even previous to that, like I'm not sure Pap can remember. Maybe he could remember when a log or two was there, but nobody I don't think lived there. Maybe when he was a real small boy. But that's a long time to still be calling this place the same name. It's just, I just love that, how names, people's names get attached to places. And of course there's, you know, roads and bridges and highways and everything named after people in that same way, so I love that. And then he talked about Thickety. That was over there where Charles lived. That was another thing when me and Charles would talk, we would have in common, talk about Thickety, especially Matt and Charles. Because just before I met Matt, now Matt grew up in the Dutch Cove, and then when Matt was grown really, and they sold that place though, then they moved to Thickety is where they moved, and they rented. And then from there they moved to where Papa lives now, and that's when I met Matt. But they had not been there long, so they still had all this connection to Thickety. So that's the same place that Charles is writing about. And then the actual cow that Jack traded Charles's daddy out of, because he knew it wasn't that good of a cow, and he took advantage of Charles's daddy having a little bit too much to drink. Then Charles's daddy turned around and done the same thing to him to get it back. But reminded me of a story that Pap would tell about a man that got somebody to buy his cow, and he was telling them, you know, you should, I want to sell it, whatever, and said, does she give a lot of milk? And they said, well, the old man said, and Pap could tell it so funny, I can't, but said she gives a waste of milk, a waste of milk. So you think about it, that does make it sound like she gives so much milk that you can't use it. It's just a waste. You just have to waste it. So the man bought the cow, and then just in a week or so he brought it back because he said, this cow don't give no milk. And the old man, is funny, he said something like, I told you she gives a waste of milk. She gives enough to cream your coffee, but nothing else. So he was thinking of it like in the opposite direction. I probably wrote about that on the Blind Pig. I should have looked it up so I could get the story better, but that was the gist of it anyway. I loved the humor and the practicability, I guess, of people in those days. They had to be. I don't blame the Jack for wanting the cow, but I sure don't blame Charles's daddy and then his mother, who had been sharing the extra milk with a family that didn't even have a cow, for wanting it back. And I would have been just like Charles's mother. I would have been like, how could you have possibly done that? How could you have got rid of our cow? And again, in those days, they depended on that for so much. The milk, the butter, like she was saying, all that. So they really, really needed their cow. But I love the old stories, and I hope you do too. I hope you enjoyed these two stories from Charles. Please leave a comment and tell me your thoughts, and I hope you'll drop back by next Friday, and we'll see what Charles tells us about next.